is it that decides the moral issues and codes? If we take a close look at researching the human history, it becomes very easy to see that there were certain few who decided what would be civil for the many. And I would say that from time to time, these things work. But just like the piston engine that has polluted the environment for way too long, it's really time for a much better change and way to do things. Otherwise, everyone basically stays the same and returning unconsciously into an even more dismal future. The earth is a place in life and a very minute speck of what is possible for each person to have and be for themselves. If we decide to interfere with another's journey, and their choices, then we must deal with what they are into. When a person leaves this world of experience, they are really leaving behind the body they used while they were here. But those who they really are is really fine. And so it would be like a person going on a trip who we can simply wish them well as a kind gesture because they made the choice and have the right to leave this place. I am referring to the right of choice for each person, and if one wants to be restricted by moral codes and ethics, which I have never seen the sun or nature become involved in, then they have the right to do so. But there is a much better lifestyle that awaits everyone who takes the risk to discover it. Well, let's see. Who's going to say something more about that?
Tim, do you have anything to share with that?
Well, I was getting back to what Lila was reading about the importance of the connection to the real guides, Rebazar, TARS, and the real guides in this particular lifetime. So this is actually like a warning to people. It's like what can be said or done to get a person's attention. This is very important stuff about their lives and the way they can test for themselves by singing the new you song before they go to sleep for 15 minutes or so, and when they wake up in the morning for 15 minutes or so, to find out for themselves if they get the real connection to the real universal guides and get real guidance and a real education about what's going on, what's real.
And then, thank you, Tim. And going back also to the ego, ego is self-convinced. It's self-convinced usually about itself in some way or other. And I had an experience today with an echist friend that we were talking about dreams. He was talking about a dream someone had. I don't know if it was himself or somebody else, a little confrontation in a dream. And somehow I blurted out, well, why don't you sing the hue? Because they adhere to this hue sound as protection. And then he said it didn't work. And then, of course, I gave him the information that I was there to give them information that, yeah, it doesn't work because it's connected to the reptilians and it actually attracts the reptilians. Try the new U sound instead. See what happens. Next time you find yourself on the real side and you're confronted with monsters, or you get yourself into trouble somehow, or if you have an entity or comes up to you. We were talking about entities and how they can disguise themselves. So you can actually sing new you, and they will reveal themselves. Basically, they can't hide their intent on the real side as easily as they can here. So they will be exposed by this vibration, this sound. Whereas if you sing the new HU, HU, it actually attracts these entities, these other entities that do harm and are not of benefit to really anybody at this point. It used to be, but now no longer that way. So we talked about the idea that somebody could disguise themselves on the real side, and he said, well, he mentioned that part, and I said, well, of course, that's just. I mean, he's been in 40 years, and he just kind of like made that realization that. So, it's just that really that there's so much more to life, and if you want to talk about ego, well, some of these people in some of the spiritual paths that they are on, or religions, they're so self-convinced that they're right that they don't want to listen to anything else. So again, I suggest to my friend to sing the new you, but of course he wouldn't have anything to do with it because his ego says that he's self-convinced and he's fine with what he has, which is fine. I'm not trying to convince him otherwise, but he's just if something doesn't work or if there's something more in life, for myself, I like to investigate it and see what's out there, because life is about, for me at least, it's about adventure and seeing more. If you're just stuck with, or if you're just happy, it doesn't have to be stuck. If you're happy with where you are, that's fine. But life moves on, and these things that normally people believe in, they're just pretty much static. They're not going anywhere. They're just like a tradition or a ritual or something that people are usually just they just stand still. There's no movement or awareness within them, especially when you get into the ritual part of it. It just becomes a habit, and you don't move on, or you don't see more. I don't want to use movement, because movement is, again, it's a certain idea. We're not talking about movement. We're talking about recognition and perception. And it's interesting to listen to Dwayne, the great writer, because he's always on mark with that. If you say something that's like a little bit off, he'll present another view to help you see maybe a greater or bigger view, because the real guides see the bigger view. In any situation, in any experience, they're the ones that see the bigger view from a bigger viewpoint. And we, usually in the physical mind, we just see very narrow and limited view of things. So when something happens to us or that kind of thing, but they see the long-term outcome. They see down the line. They see more of the different influences, and they can make better decisions at least from my experience, I see that they have a better viewpoint for that, and they're for the whole. They're for the benefit of everybody.
Of course, while we're here, we do what we do, but we can also learn to see what lies beyond and comes from the choices that we're making, what you were saying. When a person decides a career on Earth and is very focused on it, they can assume that they are taken care of for eternity. But actually, what they have decided only exists here. And so, as an example, they can imagine that being a shoemaker will get them a ride in a rocket ship into outer space. But it's highly unlikely until they decide to figure out how to get into outer space on that rocket. This is an idea that entails ideas and phenomenon and inflammation of belief in a way. The masses have been taught to believe in something, when in fact they have been conditioned with an idea that the censor has picked up and run with it. Humans are no more into figmenting their own way. They actually are seeing what is taking place right in front of them. As I am explaining all of this, it's very evident how complex the human mind and all its parts are, as I have mentioned very little so far. It must be understood here, and that is, nothing is definite, because we each have the free will to change our way of life, and every view that we have about everything. What is really true is reality itself, which is a paradox and a perplexing dichotomy to the human mind and senses. This is why the scientific community can only make educated guesses at what is really taking place on Earth, and with what each person as they are experiencing their life. For anyone to resolve their confusion, they need the real education. And so through all this drama, it becomes necessary for the pleasure principle to present its dreams in some distorted fashion so the conscious personality hopefully will not recognize them for what they are and what they entail. As an example, when a person is vain, they do not want to be confronted with the fact they really are so, and so it is the same with a person's dreams and the various parts of themselves. What a huge mess some people construct to hide what will fall them in the long run. If they would listen to the real guidance and practice the new use sessions, they would get a lot further ahead in their lives and eventually be free of the ego altogether. As each untrained person looks at their dreams, it's a wonder they can make any sense of them at all, because they are in worlds which are not mentioned in any conventional textbooks. Also, the upper psych realms are even more vast than this material realm we are in, and so the real guides become the way showers. As a person is being taught to understand their dream visions and sort out all the seemingly endless areas one can experience, Again, it is all about learning the mechanics of the mind, as one would learn about what is under the hood of their car that makes the vehicle run. Modern psychology does have a place in life, but they are more so always looking for the effects and the created causes than they are into knowing about the real you. The general public does in no way understand the workings of their own mind and all the various parts it has, just like most people do not understand all the parts that make their car run. They know how to put the car in drive and reverse, but for the most part, that's it. And so, with their own mind, is the same. They just do not see all the unseen parts and workings at play. They will laugh and joke about how silly and foolish they are at times and think it is all a big joke until the day comes when they develop a disease or an injury and most of all are ready to leave the world against their will. Then things in their life become straightforward and they have to make a decision. When the natural forces come into play and it's time to realize what a person has done with their life, it is many times a very rude awakening, and the laughter becomes tears. All the drama and unaware nonsense can be overcome for those who are patient while learning the real education and listening to the real guides. The most fun and happiness a person will ever have is being taught by the very best Revisartars and the real universal guides. Guaranteed. For some reason, overly intellectual people do not take the time to understand their own mental and emotional mechanics and the unseen forces that are all around them and also inside. They may decide to pursue the many avenues of the occult dream theories. So, for many that want to know more about their dreams, they will look to the dream books on the market, which give them all sorts of interpretations. Some of these can give an aid to the person, but for the most part, they do not address the individualized uniqueness of each person. Dreams are the exclusiveness of a world all their own. And just like a surgeon performing, so it is with the real guides and their position will, each person from the real side. And not just from the intellectual view of the educated human, because the real guides have the real connection and ageless ability to see what humans cannot. They are able to enter the world of the dreamer and provide assistance. And by doing so, they know exactly what all the mannerisms and experiences mean. For their new students, they many times set up the situations and demonstrations for the sole purpose of the individual realizing their own being and, of course, their own life. They provide the real meaning and not just guess at the material symbols according to a person's personal life only. The dream encounters and the characters who are involved are usually symbolic to or disguised to the dreamer, just as the symptoms in mental and emotional drama are usually symbolic of the real hidden problem behind all the actions. The symptoms are the result of the unresolved conflict between the pleasure principle and the ingrained and developed moral principles, or a person's conscience. When something is repressed in the unconscious arena, the memory of the dream may disappear, but the psych energy that was created remains, for the most part, undissipated, as the pleasure principle strives to make its desire come to the surface of the personal and conscious mind. This is what actually bothers a person, because they have no idea what is taking place within themselves, as the psychic energy seems to have a life of its own. The constant pressure brings about many unseen problems, which may cause a person to have system failures with their body and mind. So, to remedy this situation, the real guides know how to get to the heart of the matter and help rid the person of their built-up emotional discomfort. The real guides will not enter a person's unseen worlds without an invitation from the dreamer. Those who take the true completeness course with a new man are taken care of. All the time they are given a protection and a real education that cannot be found with any of the social rep systems. Real truth is always hidden from the unworthy.